Maverick News, the antivirus program for your mind. And now, the Freedom Reporters.
Here's what it looked like when the students took that building at Columbia last night. Right, they're pushing free speech, freedom of assembly, pushing the use of those rights right to the edge, to the max, and I'd say they've crossed the line. My opinion again. The objective here, I would say, by whatever organizations or governments or whomever is facilitating this and helping it along, I would say that the ultimate goal is really, it's just this simple. It's destabilization. Mission accomplished in a very major way. And how are they doing that? They're doing it in a variety of ways, I would say. When these kinds of things are going on, they are funneling money through the back door into organizations that get resources out to encourage this kind of behavior. Some of these people are outside agitators, and a lot of it is fueled by online media. So here's Richard Medhurst. I haven't said too much about Richard Medhurst, but I've been watching him for a while. For a time, I'd never really heard much about Richard Medhurst, really before, say, the Ukraine war. And then he kind of popped onto my radar. And very intelligent, educated, Ivy League school educated, I would say, from a prominent, progressive, liberal, left-wing kind of family, born of his parents, I believe, won a Nobel Peace Prize. So, connected, we'll put it that way. Prominent live streamer. Pro-Putin, pro-Russia, pro-Iran, pro-Syria, pro-Hamas. Pro-Palestinian. I'd say Richard Medhurst, after watching him, he hates America. And tonight, he's issuing this statement directly to, I believe, the students. I'm going to play it. I strongly disagree with this guy and his approach.
I want to directly address all the students who are protesting for Gaza and have set up encampments from Columbia to the Sorbonne. Right now, we have an opportunity to define history, to be remembered as a generation of resistance. The eyes of the whole world are upon you. Right. Your protests have ignited a fire that has spread to Canada, to France, to...
He has been igniting the fire. He's been dumping gasoline on this for a long time, this guy. A long time. Gallons and gallons of high-test anger and hate.
Britain and beyond. These are the largest student protests in American history since the Vietnam War, the most politically charged in France since 1968. We as a generation are saying to the world that Israel, Britain, and America are wrong, and we will not be part of their genocide.
Because he hates America. When he says he's an anti-imperialist, he really means he's anti-American. That's really what it means. He hates the United States. He hates the West.
Against Arabs and Palestinians. We demand that these universities, many of which are complicit, divest immediately and unconditionally. Right. And they will try to tell you that the protests are insensitive. They will claim that you don't understand the issue. Zionists will accuse you of being racist.
I understand the issue, and I understand you, Richard, better than you think. You are arrogant.
And that of which they are guilty. For we all know every Zionist accusation is a confession. You see, colonizers will come up with 1,000,001 reasons to defend their racist occupation and why they think that the land they stole belongs to them. Right now, they are scared out of their wits because in order for Zionism and American imperialism to work, they need soft power. They require a good public image.
Just like you, and you're providing it for your side. There's no balance here. Richard Medhurst is not a journalist, as he so self-describes. He is not. He is an activist and a propagandist. He is not a journalist, and he is full of anger.
And right now, we are interrupting their brunch by drawing attention to their crimes. And no, it's not going to be business as usual. These protests are effective, they are morally justified, and they are necessary.
But you see, in a moment, Richard Medhurst is going to escalate this thing and tell you exactly what they are. These are not just protests. No, they're not.
They are truly democratic in their nature. And that is precisely why the police are attacking you. The same military...
What is democratic about screaming and taking over campuses? What I don't understand at all what he means by democratic. You know, when you... This is not democratic. This is illegal, is what it is.
Industrial complex that bombs Gaza arms the police that attack students on campus. The same police that beat up students on campus train with Israeli forces. The same knee that was on Khairi Hanun's neck was on George Floyd's neck and is now pressed upon Gaza's neck.
Ah, there you go. Conflation. The same knee? The same knee. He hates America. Hates America. And he will say and do anything to inflame the situation.
Understand that we are engaging in resistance against imperialism, against Zionism, and against white supremacy.
Against white people, against the United States, against Israel, against the West. He hates the West with every fiber of his being. This guy is full of hate for us. He hates America. He hates Canada. He hates the West.
While the Israelis incur losses on the battlefield, this is another theater of war where they must be confronted and defeated. In the media, in civil society, in academia, in people's hearts and minds. Zionism must be exposed, and we must all do our bit. People in Palestine...
I think Richard Medhurst needs to be exposed. I've bit my tongue. I've said nothing for a long time. But this guy, he's way too much. And he's dangerous.
Are counting on you. Their very lives depend upon it. Unchecked, the imperialists plan to roll into Rafah, and they're already building a pier in Gaza under the pretext of humanitarian aid to establish a military foothold and steal resources. Every second that goes by, someone is buried under the rubble, alive in Gaza, gasping for air, or in pain, being starved to death. This is precisely why we must never give in. People across the entire Arab world all see what you're doing, and they are proud of you.
Yeah, except, you see, that this is propaganda and it's exaggeration. It's not an accurate portrayal of everything going on in there. And he's not telling you that these people who have become casualties have been used as human shields. And that every one of those babies, every child killed has been sacrificed for the purpose of martyrdom and public relations as part of the information war so that they could videotape them being slaughtered because they knew it would happen. He knew it would happen. And he doesn't care because he hates the West. And for those people doing this, who have allowed this to happen, Hamas and these terrorists who have sacrificed their own people by poking the enemy and provoking a response, those people should be ashamed. Look at the sneer on his face. He's full of anger and hate. Immediately after October 7th, he was cheering even before Israel responded. Even before Israel responded. Do you hear me? He was cheering. He was glad to see the Jews slaughtered on October 7th. That's the truth. Richard Medhurst.
This is a solidarity that transcends race, religion, and politics. It is humanity at its best, at its purest and most vibrant form. Remember to always stay focused on the crimes of the occupation. Always, no matter what. Never give in to agitators. Never allow racists among your ranks. Remember,
you are the useful idiots that Richard Medhurst is calling to arms tonight.
The FBI will try to infiltrate you,
or so
as they did to other movements, and cause infighting or try to make you look bad. The more you continue, the more people you inspire to do the same across other campuses around the world. Occupy the lawns, occupy the classrooms, occupy the administrative buildings, the courtyards, occupy the entire damn university. How dare they tell you that this is wrong while they occupy Palestine and Syria and butcher its people?
We are at war. The country is under attack. Do you understand, ladies and gentlemen? Your country is under attack. You have been subjected to several years of the most sophisticated psyop in history. You have been subjected to several years now of information warfare and propaganda coming from the likes of him. I'm almost embarrassed to say that I've allowed some of that information to pour in through our channel. But everything I've done here, I've tried to do with some balance, and I've been acting in good faith. Not so with him. Not so with him. A lot of what he has said has a place, and it deserves to be aired. But what he's doing is attacking America, and he is inciting people to violence. He is inciting people to attack America by using these weaponized, mob-fueled, mob-driven, I'm not even going to call them protests. They're attacks at this point. They've taken over. They've seized a building. You know, if somebody dresses like a terrorist, if they act like a terrorist, if they carry out terroristic-like activities, I'm going to call them terrorists. They've covered their faces so you can't see who they are. They've taken over buildings. They've vandalized things. They're terrorizing people. They've taken over the streets. They're doing everything they can to disrupt. They detained people. I think probably the only reason you didn't actually have a full-scale hostage-taking at Columbia is because somebody realized that it would be really bad PR. But it started. And everything that they do that is wrong, they just deny as though it never happened. Or they flip it around and blame it on America. I'm tired of it. And it's always the CIA, the CIA, the CIA. Yeah, I'm surprised he hasn't said it's the CIA this time. Well, I guess he has, hasn't he? They always do. It's just the simple go-to answer all the time now. Just blame the CIA in America. It's your fault, folks. It's your fault. Make no mistake. Once they get done with the Jews, they're coming for you. This is the same group of people that we've seen over the years. The Occupy group, the far left, which is wrapping around and coming into to convergence with the far right, the crazy extremists. I'll let him continue.
You're bringing drums to the protest? Drum harder. You're screaming at the protest? Scream harder. You brought a friend with you today? Bring 10 tomorrow. You're now on the front lines. None of us are free until Palestine is free.
Ah, you're on the front lines. Yes, you see? It's not just a protest. It's a war. And he's quite right. What you're witnessing on these campuses, it's a war. And this is Richard Medhurst's call to arms. This is Richard Medhurst's declaration of war against America, Canada, the West. Does he look like a happy guy? No. He's an enemy of America. This guy, with his keffiyeh, which isn't just a keffiyeh, it's a political statement. He's a politically hypercharged propagandist, and he's inciting people to violence.
University. How dare they tell you that this is wrong while they occupy Palestine and Syria and butcher its people? You're bringing drums to the protest? Drum harder. You're screaming at the protest? Scream harder. You brought a friend with you today? Bring 10 tomorrow. You're now on the front lines.
Independent journalist, independent propagandist. He's not a journalist, folks. Heads are blowing up right now because I'm telling you this, because I'm saying it, but I'm saying it because it's true. And I told you, I made a vow to you. I promised you all a long time ago that I would never lie to you. And I haven't. But I've allowed people to come on this program with a wide range of views. A lot of people I don't agree with. Some I do, some I don't. I really don't agree with him. And you know I stand against violence, and I don't care where it comes from. I don't like war. I don't like violence. I don't like people getting hurt. And I don't like people being manipulated. And that's what he's doing. He's been doing it for a long time. He disgusts me. Cheering for the deaths of Jews on October 7th. On October 7th. A punch in the jaw. And he was happy about it. That's the way he described it. And now he wants you to go down to those campuses and take the risks. Put your body on the line. Go fight. Why? Why are we fighting here over Palestine? Why are we fighting on the campuses here over Palestine? Why does he want you out here fighting for Palestine? Why does he want you taking over a university campus, engaging in illegal acts? Why is he encouraging people to get involved in illegal activity here? Because it's his job to jack you up and get you out there to commit these acts on behalf of people that you don't even know. You think you're out there fighting for something, but that's not what you're fighting for. It's politics. You're fighting to kill your own country. You're fighting against yourself. That's the brilliance behind this psyop and this information war. They've got people in America. They've got Americans fighting Americans. They've got Canadians fighting Canadians. They've got us fighting with each other over a conflict on the other side of the world. It's not going to be resolved very easily at all. And you inject those same issues here, not going to resolve them very easily here either. And me saying all of this is not going to change much. And you know what? I'm going to lose a lot of friends and maybe a bunch of viewers tonight. But I don't give a damn because it's the truth. And he's not the only one doing it. There's a whole network of them. And some people making really bad choices, I would say, in the last week or two. Some of these major online influencers with way bigger audiences than I have. And look at the change in the tone. They've pivoted on the issue. Taking a hard stance now. It's propaganda. Every one of those children, every baby that was killed in Gaza, you know who to blame? Hamas. Now, I told you I'm not in favor of what Netanyahu did. I don't think they should have gone in as hard as they did. Shouldn't have responded that way because that was the trap. That was what Hamas wanted. That's what they were expecting. They knew it would happen. Medhurst knew it would happen. He's connected. He's a lot more powerful than me. He's a lot bigger than me online. He's way more established than me. And he comes from, I'm just a peasant. All right? Now, I'm just a common guy from a common family. I'm just a little old Canadian sitting up here. I'm a nobody. He's somebody. That guy. He's connected. He could do great things. He could help facilitate peace. He could help bring an end to this. But that's not what he's doing. No, that's not his job. His job is to help destroy America. You know, that's the thing about October 7th is it's taken the masks off a lot of people. Now you can see them for what they really are, a lot of them. Not all of them. Some of them are still lurking in the shadows or they're cloaked. And they use these narratives to disguise their real motivations and their ideologies. And these old labels, fascist, Nazi, socialist, communist, they don't really apply anymore because who in their right mind is going to try to sell a political movement or sell themselves even as a Nazi today? Not very many people. Well, there are some, but not a lot. I mean, it's coming out slowly over time. But what is a Nazi? What is a nationalist? I'll tell you this. Vladimir Putin, Russia, very nationalistic. Very nationalist. And there's some ultra-nationalists on the Russian side. And you'll find nationalists in Ukraine and even ultra-nationalists and neo-Nazis. But you'll find those in every country all the way around the world. I try to judge people as individuals. Richard Medhurst wants violence. He wants blood. He wants you to head out onto the front lines. Go to war. You want to go fight for Richard Medhurst? Because that's who you're fighting for. Richard Medhurst and whoever it is that's above him signing the checks. you keep that in mind if you're a student or anybody else, and you're thinking of heading out to protest. I've come out so many times over the past couple of years warning people about these protests because they're not just protests. It's a weapon. They're weapons. It's a kind of weapon. They're mobilizing massive numbers of people to get out into the streets to destabilize our countries, the United States and Canada. I'm afraid to look in the chat because every time I tell people the truth, I get hammered. I don't know what... Am I missing something here, Dennis? I don't quite understand. I'm just... I'm waiting for Laurie Spencer's response. Well, I don't know that she needs to respond. I'm the one yakking, unless she said something in the chat. She can speak for herself. She can... She's a grown up and she's quite competent and smart. She can handle it, whatever it is. I just don't know what it is you want or why you might be. I don't understand the comments. But anyhow. And here's Dennis. When it comes to world events in war, Rick couldn't tread well. I see. Why don't you come on, Dennis, and you and I'll have a discussion. Are you ready? Or do you want me to not put you up there yet, Lori? There you are.
Well, hello. I just thought I'd sneak up on you and surprise you. Boo! I snuck in.
Yeah.
Hey, I just wanted to come on and personally thank you for what you said today and your moral clarity. It's needed right now. Thanks. Because I know you don't read the chat, and you probably didn't see what I was typing. So
no, I have no idea what's going on in there. I'm totally confused, but I'm not surprised that some heads are blowing up and I'm under attack, or so it seems. No. I don't know if that's what it is.
No, see, that's why you should read the chat.
I guess
most people agree with you.
Oh.
I think the best way I could sum it up is the silent majority. The majority of Americans, and probably Canadians too, who haven't lost their minds yet, they understand that it's wrong to prevent any student paying tuition access to their university. They should have the use and enjoyment of all the buildings, all the grounds, all the public spaces.
That's right.
Free from being harassed by gangs of, people who are tormenting them or worse. We've seen this turn violent in a few instances. That means the Zionist kids too. They're entitled to an education too. And it's that simple. And we dealt with this back in the 60s at the University of Ole Miss at Oxford and at the University of Alabama. Remember the George Wallace standing in the doorway incident to keep the black kids from coming onto campus? We settled that. We settled that with the 1964 Civil Rights Act, which was introduced by JFK. President Kennedy signed into law after he died by Lyndon Johnson. I thought this issue was settled a long, long time ago. And it should be.
Unfortunately, I don't think it's ever going to be possible to completely stamp out prejudice, racism. It has to be, forever vigilant, right? That's what we need to be.
Exactly. And we need leaders like you. So I tell you what, I'll be right back. I've got somebody knocking at the door. I got UPS here with a delivery. I'll be right back.
I'm still here. Yeah, okay. Well, those are kind words. Not easy for any of us these days to stay on target and keep our heads screwed on straight. We're all subjected to so much information, and it is information overload. And, as I see these mass protests happening right now, you know what it comes to mind? The pandemic and the what can only be described as mass formation psychosis that gripped the nation at that time. All of these things are fueled by emotion, fear, anger, mostly. It's no different here. It was the same thing during the pandemic. That's how they convinced everybody to put their masks on, stand on the, the little footy print things that on the stickers on the floor, get everybody to just fall into line and do the things that they needed to have done. And, people's views even now are, they vary, but they certainly used fear at the time to get people to take certain actions, right? Same thing here. And there's a mob mentality that comes with this stuff. And in addition to that, people tend to they just, when you're dealing with a mob, people want to go with the side that they think is winning as well. That's why the information war is so darn important. Because then it doesn't even matter if you're losing. If you can convince people that you're winning, you get the public on side. And as I've been saying for months, even when it comes to the funding for Israel, for Ukraine, for Taiwan, the wars, all of this stuff, they need your support. Public relations, that's what it's all about. And I've said, if one country can convince the population in another country not to support funding for a war, you cut the funding off, you win the war. That's what's largely been going on over here in North America as well. That's why these online influencers have been so aggressive about what they're doing there too. As I've said from the beginning, I didn't want that war in Ukraine to start, and I don't want anybody dying, and I want it to come to an end. Same thing in Gaza. But at a certain point, man, you have to understand that you're under attack. These protests, they're not protests in the streets. This is warfare. Fifth generation warfare. And this is just one aspect of it. And you're on the front lines if you go out there.
Don't.
Good
That would be
idea.
my advice. My advice would be just don't go out there unless you want to brawl. And I think, Rick, a lot of these kids are just looking for a fight. They just want to fight. They don't understand the history of this conflict. They've been indoctrinated into a certain version of history by their professors. Someone was asking in the chat earlier, where did they learn this? And I said, from their professors. That's where they learned it, and the professors are at the protesting right alongside them, getting arrested right alongside them. And yes, most of them are professors of Marxism, Marxist history, and all kinds of race and genealogy studies. And why is that? Because Nazis have always been infatuated with race and race studies and eugenics and all that stuff. That was happening at the Ivy League American universities in the 1920s, 30s. Eugenics was a thing. And by the way, Columbia, Harvard, a lot of these grand old Ivy League schools in the 30s were openly supportive of the Nazi regime for those very reasons, I might add. They endorsed the Nazi race policies. They endorsed the Nuremberg laws. So when you understand that, it's not so surprising to see what's being taught right now. And by the way, remember the other night on Strange Bedfellows when I said that there aren't any pro-Hamas protests happening at the University of Oklahoma campus? I should say this, that's my alma mater, and I'm very proud of my school right now. And I went to two schools. I went to OU for a couple of years, and then I moved to Texas, and I went to the University of Texas at Austin, which is a very liberal, practically communist school, right? And you've seen the protests at UT. They just had another big one yesterday where they clashed with police, and it got pretty ugly. So I got two totally different types of education, and it was good for me to go to a normal college like OU and then go to UT for a couple of years and see the difference in what's being taught. But I wanted to say there's a history professor that I had at OU named Stephen Norwood, actually a very well-known history professor, and he's written a couple of books about the Ivy League campuses in the 1930s and how they endorsed Nazi Germany and even worked with Nazi Germany. And I think it's a book that they are two books that everyone should read. I posted a link in chat earlier where you can find his books. But he's the reason, largely, why we're not having pro-Hamas protests here in Oklahoma at the OU campus, because we have good professors here who teach real history. That's important.
Well, I think it's important to also to acknowledge that we had a lot of soldiers in World War II that went to fight against the Nazis.
Right.
And
yeah, they changed their tune after Pearl Harbor.
And even, well, there was, and even now, even though we have a guy in the White House who is a problem, it's still the United States that is the beacon of hope for the entire world and for freedom. And that's why we need to protect it. And that's why we need to understand that we are under attack. And we need to save the damn country. And isn't it interesting that even today, we don't even hear much about the hostages anymore? Yeah. And that's in itself inexcusable. Mm-hmm. Whoever might still be alive is suffering immensely. And the war crimes that I'm seeing, it's just the display of the hostages on videos.
Yep.
With anti-American, anti-Israeli messages. Obviously, someone's arm is blown off. They're not getting proper medical care. They're in captivity, and they're broadcasting these videos. I didn't run them here.
Violation of the Geneva Convention there.
No, I'm not going to rebroadcast that. It's highly, highly unlikely that what is being said was not coerced from the person. That was their own. They're really their own thoughts or views. That's right.
Got them at gunpoint.
So
read the script.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So no, I'm not going to engage in. I'm not going to assist them with the distribution of their propaganda.
Right. It was hard enough to play the Richard Medhurst video tonight, which was propaganda, and it was 100%. A straight up call to jihad in the United States.
Yes.
In the United States, and. That video came out. He released it last night around 9 or 10 o'clock. And within 2 hours, they took Hamilton Hall at Columbia University. They took it over by force, broke in. And they did the same thing at the University of Virginia at Richmond. 2 buildings. That's in addition to Humboldt, California, where they are also occupying a building on campus. They answered his call. He specifically told them in that video, go out, occupy the buildings, occupy the campuses. You heard him. They did. So his propaganda is very effective, and it's important that you played that so that people could see it for themselves and hear it for themselves and understand what's really going on here. Because I was a fan of Richard's, I thought Richard did really good reporting on the Assange case. He covered that. I followed his reporting for 3 years, but there's also more to the story with Richard Medhurst. I can show you videos from 4 years ago, 5 years ago, when he wasn't political at all. He was like an aspiring rapper, which the videos are actually kind of funny. You ought to look him up and play him on the show sometime. He was like, and he had a Chicago dialect, not a trace of a British accent at all, right?
Isn't that? See, I didn't. Yeah, never even on my radar until the last couple of years. You see, and when I first started watching him, I thought, well, I don't really agree with a lot of what he says, but I respect him. He seems to have some important things to say, and I can respect that. And so I did follow him a little bit.
Very intelligent.
What I've seen is, well, disgusting.
That was beyond the pale. That video
yeah.
last night was just.
He
He's been
hates
getting
America.
increasingly radical, and he's always been radical. And I'll give him this: he is from Syria, so he comes by it honestly. This is his culture. This is how he was raised. This is what he was taught. This is what he believes. So at least I'll give him that. He's sincere in what he believes.
Nevertheless,
Yeah.
he's putting people at risk. His
Right.
objective is clearly to destabilize, undermine, attack America. And he is the enemy. Right now,
Yeah.
he is the enemy. And so if people need to understand that. The enemy is in the streets. The enemy is Richard Medhurst. The enemy is people who are spouting off with this exact same rhetoric.
And George Galloway.
The great Judge Galloway.
The great George Galloway.
He might hold elected office, but it doesn't mean he's not the enemy. You want to talk about government infiltration, you're looking at it right there.
Right. And there are many of them in our Congress, and there are more of them running for seats in Congress, including our old friend Jose Vega, who's currently running for that seat in the Bronx up against Richie Torres. And there's only one reason, Rick, that he's running. One. Gaza.
Palestine.
Yeah, I don't think he has. I mean, I don't know what his plans are to help the people of the Bronx, but he's obsessed with Israel. He's got Israel derangement syndrome, and he's got to take on Richie Torres. And you know what? He could win that race because it's a heavily Muslim district with only about, I think, less than 2% Jews in that district. So
Well, when he was on Strange Bedfellows and I was on there with you, I was trying to be polite. It was difficult.
I know. Strange Bedfellows is a challenging show, isn't it? Because we're always having to try to find some common ground and civility with people with whom we disagree vehemently.
Yeah, and let me state very clearly, okay, I have nothing against Muslims. One of my best friends, like my next door neighbor, right? We great friends. But
Well, listen,
he's
Islamism
not
is like-
Hamas.
No. Islamism is a scourge upon the
thing,
Muslim
yes.
faith,
Yeah.
And you can talk to a lot of great people from Iran who are your neighbors and ask them why they're here in Canada now. Ask them why they're in the United States. They'd be happy to tell you why they left after 1979 or were forced out
Yep.
in fear of their lives.
Yep.
They'll tell you.
Yep.
Ask them.
Yep. And
Iranians are awesome.
Yeah. And as critical as I am at times of the United States, Canada, of NATO, the West, I'm still glad I live here because I can say Justin Trudeau is the worst prime minister in Canadian history, and I still got through the airport and I didn't even get searched, right? It's like
That's right.
So I still have that, and I can say those kinds of things, but I know that in these other countries, you dare not.
Right. Yeah.
So-
Well, it's like the video we just played of Alex Stein at UT at the Trans People for Palestine rally.
It's just
All he was
stupid.
saying was, look, dude, how do you think it's going to go for you if you visit Gaza?
How do they
Or-
think it's going to go for them if these people are successful and they tear down society and take over the government? If they're the ones governing here, and we keep hearing people here in Canada, the radicalized people, say that we will soon be living under Sharia law. These are people who are telling us point blank that it's their goal to basically establish a dictatorship here. We're not going to... These people from the left who are supporting this, all you have to do is just believe them when they tell you that they want to establish an Islamo-fascist regime to take over and rework the system here. You're going to be living under
very clear.
authoritarianism.
They're very
Just
clear.
Yeah.
But, what was the banner that they unfurled outside of Hamilton Hall on Columbia's campus today? What did it say?
Yeah.
Intifada. Yeah. That's what it said. So they're not hiding what
I don't
their
know
intentions are.
What is it with people today that even when it's like it's right in front of you, And it's like, nah. Or they just don't understand. It's just blind. It's like they're telling you, we're taking over your country. Blah. Whatever. Let's go to McDonald's. What is it? It's like it's right in front of you, and you're not seeing it.
Cognitive dissonance.
Yeah.
Cognitive dissonance. Like, how much more obvious does it need to be? It's right in your face.
Right. So just, we have to deal with it. And I think we have still an opportunity to deal with this in a very even-handed, level-headed, low use of force way. But if we let it fester and masticize this cancer is going to spread to the point where it's going to get violent. You need to stamp it out now.
It already is.
Yes, I mean, like it's
the
gone
thing
too
is,
far.
are we just waiting for someone to get killed? Is that what it's going to take for President Biden to act? Is that what it's going to take for these school administrators to act, to comply with the federal law? Once again, the 1964 Civil Rights Act, specifically Title VI. This isn't rocket science. This is basic law. This is basic civil rights law 101. I studied it in school, and I guarantee you all these people are lawyers. They understand that it's the law of the land. They're choosing not to enforce it. President Biden is choosing to do nothing. He could federalize the National Guard today and should have done it weeks ago.
He is just more worried about votes in Michigan than he is about the the welfare of the country.
That's exactly it.
Yeah, and why would you be fighting this battle here anyway, like this? Really, I mean, it's. I get that America's involved, but for this to be going on like we're seeing it right now, no, these are not just protests, and it doesn't serve the students well. These people are all useful idiots. And what we're witnessing in the streets is not really, again, in my view, a protest anymore. It is,
if it ever really was.
Yes, in this case, it was not. This is an attack on America.
Right. That's what I wish people would wake up and understand. This is someone, I don't know who, is ultimately behind this, but somebody's trying to destabilize our country and start a civil war. And it's really been going on for years.
Yep.
I don't know who to point the finger of blame at, if it's internal or external.
It's both.
Or
But
both.
what I've been trying to tell people is the internal threat is not the system. It isn't the United States attacking itself. It's people who are corrupted, people who have been bought off. It's people
Or
who get
ideologically driven.
Right, ideologically driven and manage to get into government or into bureaucratic positions where they can then work from within to tear everything down. And that's why it looks like the United States attacks itself, when in reality it's bad actors, people under foreign influence who are in there tearing it down from the inside. So it looks like it's the government, but it's traitors within the government doing it to us. It's not the United States. These are enemies of the state working from within.
The Enemy Within. That's
Enemy
the name
Within.
of a book that was written by Robert Kennedy when he was before he was Attorney General. The Enemy Within.
So that's what is going on. And it doesn't take a lot of like rocket science to figure out where the foreign influence comes in, and it's coming from various sides, I would say. And all you have to do is just go watch that video with Yuri Bezmenov. He talks about it. How during the Soviet era, the KGB would just, and this is the same thing they do today. They identify groups that are disruptive, that want to tear down the United States, and those groups may not even realize where their donations come from or their support. but they kind of find these little snowballs and start rolling them down the hill, and they help them along in order to cause more and more disruption within the country that they target. And that's what we see in the streets and on campus now. Big snowballs.
Who was funding the PLO back in the 60s and 70s and 80s? Remember? It was the Soviets.
Oh, well, of course, yeah. Yeah.
And all of those Palestinian liberation groups from that era were Soviet funded. Now we know because we have the documents to prove it.
Of course, and I mean, who benefits from this? I mean, we're at war. We are literally at war right now, so this shouldn't come as a surprise to anyone. And I would like better relations with all these countries. I would like better relations with Russia and better relations with China and all of them. India.
Right, because the Cold War is turning hot with Russia real quick over there in Ukraine.
I wish
Even
we
if it's
could
a proxy
have better,
war, it's still a hot war.
But we're at war, and
yes,
this is one of the front lines. And Richard Medhurst is a mouthpiece for Russia and Iran. He is. He's paid. He works for
Galloway.
RT. That's right.
So
All these guys are. I mean,
and our good friend Scott Ritter.
100%. And as much
Love
as I,
Scott.
much as I like Scott, I mean, I haven't had him back on the program. I haven't even contacted him or asked him because I can see that he is so wrong. He's just so wrong.
Bought and paid for, man.
100%. Because he has to be. They're paying him to be. Right?
Dude's got to make a living,
It's like whatever. It doesn't matter what it is. Russia always wins. The other side always. I can write the script for him.
Oh, wait for it. It'll be over next week. They're going to crush Ukraine. It'll be over next week.
I've been hearing that for 2 years.
Right.
So after a while, honestly,
wrong
again,
Scotty.
A lot of his analysis is on point because he'll give you the current lay of the land, I think, and the football chart, like the troops are here and here and here and here, but then it turns into, but by Tuesday, all the Ukrainian troops will be dead, and we'll be marching into Kyiv. So it's like, and then it doesn't happen.
Still
and then
waiting
again and again for 2 years. So after, like, what's the point in talking to him?
Well, it's the same thing with Colonel McGregor.
Exactly.
Who's also quite disappointing here lately.
Oh my! It's the same thing. It's just it's disappointing, but
it is.
That again, folks. That's the truth. And I haven't wanted to come out and say anything negative about any of these guys because I have had respect for them.
Sure,
but
they're my friends.
It's just,
and I'm trying to maintain those friendships, but
but it's
not
just
easy
it's so
right
blatantly obvious that it's just not what they're saying isn't true. So
Scotty's gone full Hamas, like Halo says here. He lost it. He lost the plot. Shortly after October 7th, Scott was literally posting on Twitter, "I am pro Hamas." I mean, he makes no bones about it. At least he's honest. I'll give him that. He believes what he believes, and
but that shows you as well that Russia is also backing Hamas. They are backing that side. They are, and that's because they are so closely allied now with Iran. They're working so closely together that that's where the alliances are drawn. You have those countries over there, and you have the West over here. Israel's with the United States, and that's just the way it is. And so all these online influencers, it's their job to carry that narrative forward, and they're very effective with it. But I have backed away.
Them, I think some of them are well-meaning. They have good hearts. They've seen the horrible images coming out of Gaza. How could anyone who's a parent or anyone with a heart look at these videos of injured children and not feel anger and pain looking at those images, and that's exactly the way those images are produced to provoke that reaction in you. And we have now analyzed a lot of those images and find that many of them are from old conflicts. It's old footage. Some of it's AI. Some of these photographs are just outright fake.
Yep.
And let me tell you, folks, the Hamas machine has a very skilled propaganda arm. Very well funded, very well organized. They've got some pretty good producers on their team. Rick, I know you've done video production for more than 35 years, and you know all the tricks. You know how propaganda can be done, and they're very good at it.
Very.
So they're working your emotions, and so that's why you see these college kids out here. I'm not saying they're all Nazis or fascists or bad people. A lot of them truly think they're helping the children of Gaza. They think they're stopping a genocide. That's the propaganda that they heard on their favorite podcast. That's what they heard from Jimmy Dore, from Max Blumenthal, from Scott Ritter, from all these, George Galloway, all these people that they admire, Richard Medhurst. And they think, well, if they said it, it must be true. And I saw the video on TikTok. Look at these kids. I mean, this is horrible. We have to do something to stop it. But they don't understand.
The children.
Yeah. It's
Of
always
course, what's
for the
worse
children.
than dead babies? I mean, that's
Nothing.
why they talk about it, and that's what I've been saying. They've martyred those babies,
Right.
and they've sacrificed them. Hamas sacrificed them.
Yes. And yet no one seems to blame Hamas, which is
Nobody.
where the blame truly lies. And I'm running a Twitter poll right now, actually. I asked my audience today, or the Twitterverse, not just my audience. Anybody can vote in that poll. But I asked, who is the real oppressor of the Palestinian people? And the options were Hamas, the Palestinian Authority, or Israel. You know what's scary? It's about half and half right now between Hamas and Israel. So at least half of the people, and it's several hundred votes so far, believe that Israel, that's how powerful that propaganda is. Very persuasive. You know,
It
they
really
truly
is.
believe that Israel's responsible.
Yeah, and you know, with Ritter, with McGregor, with all of these guys. I mean, yeah, we know them, and I've been watching them. I've been buying a lot of what they've been saying at certain points. Not everything, but a lot of what they say. I'm like, yeah, okay, you're the expert, if you will, in this area. So I cede to you a lot of this stuff. But no, it's just so blatantly obvious now that so many of these guys have just gone full anti-America. Guys like Medhurst.
It's hard to blame Scott
you know.
because the United States was not kind to Scott Ritter.
Yeah.
But, you know, he's got his reasons, I suppose. Oh, my Lord, will you look at this? I just checked my poll. It's worse than I thought, Rick. I got about 300 votes so far. And right now, 50% believe that Israel is the oppressor of the Palestinian people. That's more than Hamas. There's 41% say Hamas. About 4% say the Palestinian Authority. Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. So if you would like to vote in that poll, please go to my Twitter. It's @RealLoriSpencer, and please do cast a vote. Maybe we can change the outlook and the outcome of that poll. So yeah, I'm proud of you, Rick. I'm very proud of you because I know that throughout this conflict for the last 6 months, you've been trying to maintain your objectivity as a journalist, to report on both sides, to be fair. So have I. But it's come to the point now, especially since these protests have ramped up in North America, and we're seeing the blatant anti-Semitism, and it's becoming increasingly violent because no one's checked it. And if you negotiate with terrorists, you get more terrorism. Okay, that's how it works.
That's right.
So, there does come a point. I messaged you about it earlier today. I said, at what point do we stop both sidesing this thing and find some moral clarity? And just at what point do we say this is wrong?
Well, my approach to this really has not changed tonight. It may appear that way simply because my language is maybe more forceful, but I've always been against Hamas. I've always been against terrorism. I've always said the things that I've been saying with regard to, the people being used as human shields and the children being used as martyrs. I've made, consistent references to martyrdom as being the motivating factor behind the October 7th attack. I haven't changed any of that.
That's right, because I was on the air with you on October 7th, and I remember you were very clear. This is wrong. This is terrorism.
And it's not just about both sidesing something when you're a journalist, though. Being a journalist means, yes, you get to look at all sides of an issue and give people an opportunity to express their points of view or even their ideology, which you may not agree with, so people can have a greater understanding. But being a true journalist also means that after doing all of that, if something is wrong, blatantly wrong, or not serving the public interest, or illegal, or whatever, right? If it's in the public interest to call out something because something's on the wrong side of history, or it's cruel, or genocidal, if it is truly, then you call these things out because that's in the public interest. It isn't just about this guy says that and this guy says that. If it's a story about organized crime and somebody's hurting people as an organized criminal, you don't just say, well, the organized criminal, the mafia guy says this, and just leave it at that. No, the guy committed a crime and took the little old lady's money, right? So you call that out because that's wrong. That's part of what journalism is too. We're here to serve the public. We're the eyes and the ears of the public as a journalist. You understand? It's not just, folks, this guy says that and this guy says that. Yes, we provide the platform, but at the end of the day, it also comes down to what's right, what's wrong, and if a politician is doing something wrong, you hold them accountable. That's our job as well. That's why I can sit here, though, in our society, in Canada, in the United States, where we have still at least some free speech, I can sit here and be very critical of the Prime Minister or Pierre Poilievre or any other politician, and I don't get thrown into the gulag.
Oh, hi, Kitty. Hello. This is my boy, Jack. Hey, Jack. Came to say hello.
Yeah.
Actually, he's telling me, Mom, you've been sitting here too long, and you need to come pay attention to me.
So yeah, folks, make sure you come back tomorrow. I promised you that at the beginning of the broadcast, but we'll hold it for tomorrow, and we'll have Carl Larson on with a broader context, a broader point of view on this that I think will help us all understand everything just a little bit better. And I'm eager to share that with you.
Curious to see that. Curious to see that. But that's what good journalism is, right? Some of your viewers aren't going to like it because they just don't like Ukraine. They're on the Russian side. But again, that's what journalism is all about, is to bring you all of the viewpoints, let you make up your own mind.
And a lot of people not liking what I said tonight, so
Yeah.
I'm sure. So what else is new?
I probably lost about 100 followers just in the last 24 hours.
Yeah.
I've been used to that since October the 7th.
Yeah.
You know, my point of view is not the popular one right now. But
No,
I'd
it's
like to
not.
remind people that throughout history, usually the idea that the mob has is not the correct one. Segregation, COVID lockdowns, masking, vaccine mandates. I could go on and on and on. And Nazi Germany. That too. It's very popular.
At the time,
Very
it was,
popular.
yes.
Fascism
Look at the
was
size of the crowds.
very popular. If you opposed it back in the day, you were in a small minority, at least in this continent. So that's okay. I'm used to having an unpopular opinion. You know, I'm a journalist, but I don't mind expressing an opinion. People aren't going to like it, so what?
And you know, one of the motivating factors in bringing people like Scott Ritter and Colonel McGregor on is that you bring those guys on, I could bring them on here. They're worth like 50, 60,000 views like that. So if you're trying to build a channel, just bring those guys on. I know that, but I haven't done it because my integrity is everything. I'm not going to sacrifice my integrity for 50,000 views for one night.
Preach.
Because I know that a year from now, 2 years from now, and when I'm in my grave, I've got to live with whatever I do. Not that I don't like those guys, but I see that right now there is, well, extreme bias, shall we say. So what's the value in it? It's not valuable to our viewers because it's propaganda.
Well, and I mean, they've got a huge audience on their own channels, right?
That's right. They don't need
on
me.
other channels. They've got a big audience listening to what they have to say. But, usually those who are on the right side of history start out as a minority.
Yeah.
And it changes, I mean, today, Martin Luther King is a national hero in the United States. We have a holiday named after him. We have streets named after him. We have memorials all over the place to Dr. King, and he's looked upon as a hero now. But that was not the case in his time, Rick, as you well know. At the time he was killed in 1968, nearly 70% of Americans disapproved of Dr. Martin Luther King. So let that sink in. Cogitate on that tonight as you wonder, should I follow the crowd? Should I support the latest thing? Or should I stand on the right side of history? That's your choice to make, Mavericks.
It is. And I'll be back tomorrow night with that interview with Carl Larson, and we'll keep on working to try and get you closer to the truth. Simple as that. Love you guys.
Good night, Rick. Good night, Mavericks.
Catch y'all on the flip side.
This has been a Maverick Multimedia production.